Hi, I'm Sam Candy. Welcome to Sustain Talks. Today, I'm joined by Alexis Eyre, sustainable marketing consultant and co-founder of Sustaineers Consultants and co-founder of Sustainable Marketing Compass. Hi, Alexis. It's good to have you with me today. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I've seen so much of you on Sustaineers, on LinkedIn. We talk a lot on there, and it's good to share your views and the things that you post about as well. Let's start by if you want to give yourself a bit more of an introduction and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a marketer for a very long time now, and I've worked across all three sides. So I've worked media, owner side, agency side and client side. In terms of sustainable marketing, I've been in this space for the last 2.5 years, and I also project manage sustainable transition projects for companies as well. So I predominantly work in the sustainable marketing space, but I also do get involved with the wider transition projects as well, alongside the Sustaineers consultants. So yes, a bit of a mixed bag, really. And yeah.
People might not know about Sustaineers, so do you want to say a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so the Sustaineers is actually a wider community of people that it's a sort of safe space to talk about sustainability issues, and it's people who work in sustainability, who would like to get into sustainability, who are just interested by the topic. I mean, there's a real variety of people in there, and it literally varies on. You get people from all over the world, and they're all different seniorities in terms of companies, all different industries. It's a real mixture, which is why I think it's such a rich and diverse community. And then the Sustaineers consultants are a group of consultants who all specialize in different areas of sustainability, and we formed a group off the back of that community and now work as a body in its own right. So it shows the power of that community, really.
Yeah, it really does. And I think often with I have a few different contacts I reach out to when I come across a question from a client or something doesn't sound right, and I normally sort of ask 5 or 6 different people and I always get a completely different answer from them. But it's good to have that network and community that you can reach out to and just sense check things, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. And I think that diversity of opinion is so important in this, especially as I think all the different nationalities make such a big difference, because actually plastic pollution in the UK is very different to plastic pollution and how it's tackled in somewhere like India or Sri Lanka, or I don't know, whichever country, but it's very different. And so actually, if you ask about stuff, it's amazing, that diversity of opinion, because it's often based on very different points of view from where you are in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's only recently that we really experienced the extreme heat that we did last week or the week before, in comparison to other countries around the world that are used to living like that permanently. Yeah. You started your career marketing mostly in the marine industry, right? But you made a move into sustainability and marketing with purpose. At what point made you decide to switch?
Do you know what? It wasn't actually the marine industry originally. I actually started working for the Times and Sunday Times. That's where I started originally, and then I went into the marine industry because I just loved sailing, and I couldn't believe that I could actually work and do my hobby at the same time. And then I ended up going over to a creative agency, partly because it was local, and I wanted to see the final side of the triangle, the marketing triangle. And actually, it was when I was there that I did a transatlantic crossing on a yacht, and I saw a plastic chair floating past me, and I was 1,000 miles from land, along with many plastic bottles. More than wildlife, I saw more rubbish than wildlife, and I was like, I'm literally in the middle of nowhere. Like I couldn't be further from land if I tried, or humanity, and yet I'm seeing more signs of humanity's destruction than I am of the wildlife that I came out here to see, and the wilderness. And I came back from that, and I was like, I've just got to do something about it. And that's really where I got into it, was trying to find a course that I could do. And I couldn't afford a master's at the time, so I ended up doing the business sustainability management really intensive course by the Cambridge Institute of Sustainability Leadership, which is an arm of Cambridge University. And that just changed my world. And I've never looked back. I couldn't go back into old marketing again. I couldn't go back into the old way of doing business. It just changed my entire life. And it changed my lifestyle as well, like outside work.
Yeah. Did you, so many of my contacts have been through that course. And, you know, I know how it's challenging and there's a lot of work involved. The people that you met within the course, because from what I understand, you all speak together and build a community together, don't you? So you stay in touch with everyone from the course as well, right?
Yes, I mean, that's where the Sustaineers community came out of, was actually a group of them deciding that we needed to build this community further and outside our initial cohort and connect with other cohorts who'd done the course and everything else. And it is just such a powerful community. They're like my friends these days, you know, and you discuss all kinds of things, and it's such a safe space to talk about stuff and to talk about the challenges and everything and the opportunities. I've never been in an industry like it. I've never been in a working environment like this, where it is so collaborative and supportive, and it's all around partnerships, not us against them all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that this industry sector, it just seems different. People are so welcoming to have a conversation. You know, there's no competitiveness. It doesn't matter if you know, if you're a consultant, I'm a consultant, someone else is. If you can help somebody, you will. And I really love that. I found it really warming, and made so many connections in such a short period of time. Other industry sectors, they're quite cliquey, and yet it doesn't feel like it is that cliquey. So yeah, it's been a really great experience, especially for somebody that works mostly on my own as well. I'm sure you feel the same. You feel like you've got a little you know, it's like being part of a company in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's you never feel that alone. I think that's the big thing. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about where you specialize in impactful marketing. You see a lot of greenwashing going on, and I think that there's probably a bit of a struggle with companies knowing. They probably don't even realize that they're doing it. A lot of companies are like, right, we've got to get on the sustainability bandwagon. Where do you see some obvious mistakes anywhere?
Well, in terms of greenwashing, I think the biggest, it's not a mistake, it's the reality of the situation really, is that you've got a sustainability team and you've got a marketing team, and we've only met one brand where both teams sit under the same person. So the marketing and sustainability team are within the same group. Whereas what's happened is you've got all of these marketing people who don't understand sustainability, and so they've been asked to go and communicate about a company's sustainability plans, and yet they don't know anything about sustainability. So they just literally take what they've been told without being inquisitive, without checking information, or putting their sort of amazing marketing spin on it, which often then means that they end up in the greenwashing camp. But I genuinely don't think that 95% of the where you see greenwashing is intentional. I think it's just a lack of education and awareness around sustainability. And if you're in marketing, just go and get yourself educated in sustainability. There's so many free tools out there. There's so many free training programs by the likes of United Nations. You've got Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I mean, there's loads. And even if you just did a few things just to get on the bandwagon, it would just help so much. And I think that will really help companies stop greenwashing as well, if you have that kind of insight from your marketing team.
Yeah, I mean, we run a lot of webinars, and it's why I started doing this podcast, actually. I kept having conversations with people, and I was like, oh, I wish I could share this with people that I know they could learn so much from it. And I was like, actually, I can. Started putting the content out there. And so many people came back and said, oh, thanks for that. I had no idea what net zero meant, or I really didn't understand the concept of ESG. And I think that the more that we can keep educating, and educating free as well. There's like all of the content that we put out is free, and I think that is just going to get out to so many more people. Just back on the greenwashing, you say educate themselves as well, but how can companies avoid greenwashing?
I think there's a number of things. I think firstly, a marketing team needs to align with a company's corporate sustainability objectives. So first of all, it's actually a marketing team going in and understanding, well, what is my company doing? Not just a few bits leaving off the message, what's the entirety of it? And how can we as marketing help contribute positively toward those objectives, which has never been done before. And this is why it's such an exciting space right now, is actually marketing coming on board, and actually rather than just communicating as company sustainability plans, is actually going, do you know what, we've got this amazing ability to be able to change hearts and minds. That's what we are. We're creative, we're innovative. But how can we use that to drive positive impact and actually align with the company's wider sustainability objectives? So I think that's the first thing, is just getting that alignment with the much wider piece and working out where you can contribute positively. The second is definitely education. The third, I think, is if you are asked to communicate something, find out more details about it, and then create a campaign around it, and then send that campaign back to the people that asked you to do it. So your sustainability team, your supply chain management team, whoever it is, and ask them to check the facts, because ultimately they know if what you're saying is greenwashing or not. I think that the other thing as well is putting a sustainability lens on every single decision you make. And this is, the greenwashing is so focused on messaging. And actually greenwashing is so much bigger than messaging. It's which events you sponsor, it's which influencers you work with. It's if you are deciding to go to an event, are you creating a shed load of waste, or are you buying lots of merchandise, completely pointless merchandise, which will end up in landfill anyway? And most of the time, I bet quite a lot of decisions you're making are actually going against what your sustainability teams are trying to achieve. They might be going for zero waste, and there you are buying all this merchandise and then letting it just be thrown away. So I think having that sustainability lens going, okay, right, does this, could this make money? Okay, that's marketing's perspective. Okay, what effects does it have on the environment? This particular decision, what does it have on society? Are there any negative impacts there? And does it align with what my company's saying? If my company's saying no waste, should I be producing any waste? And I think that will really start to put a completely different frame on what you're trying to achieve, and prevent you from greenwashing, because suddenly you're aligned with everything else. You're not clashing head first with sustainability. You're trying to say something completely different.
I totally agree with you. I've seen recently a company posted something about, they were asking, what merchandise do you think we should use at an exhibition as we're trying to be more sustainable? And I was like, how about none at all?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that just drives me more insane than anything. I was like, and I'm not completely anti-merchandise, but what I think, if you're going to go down the merchandise route and you're like, this is the only way we can get through to our customers, 6 months beforehand, send something out to all your customers and ask them what would be useful to them. Imagine if you gave them 20 options and you said, if we were to make something, and they can be a list of sustainable options, like there's nothing in there that'll be wasteful, so it'll be like reusable water bottles, or I don't know, this is where you need to get really creative around what you choose, but actually asking your customers what would actually be useful if we were to give anything out, then at least you're actually going to reduce waste monumentally, and also get a really much better idea around, customer knowledge anyway within that area. But ultimately, I'm with you. I think really, actually, I'm pretty anti-merchandise. So the majority of the time, but if you are going to do it, at least do the shared partnership approach with your customers and find out actually what they want.
I remember the last exhibition I went to, everyone was offering out wildflower seeds. They'll put them in a little pot in their garden, and it's good. I have a wildflower area in my garden, so it's not too bad.
No, do you know what? That's actually, I don't mind that. If everyone feels like handing out wildflower seeds, I'm really all for that. At least I feel like that's a sort of, that genuinely is a positive impact, even if only 50% is used.
I totally agree. I've made a few posts recently about, and there's obviously been lots of news in the press about the oil giants and the profits that they're making and where those profits are going. The oil giants are also marketing themselves as companies that are focusing on renewables. What do you think about the marketing that they do and how they market themselves? Do you think that they should be allowed to do that?
I think they're completely misleading with their marketing, because I think the campaigns themselves aren't always bad, but they're just not realistic for what the bigger picture is. And don't quote me on this because I don't know the exact stats, but it'll be something like 20% of their revenue is invested in renewable, but 80% is still being invested in still sourcing new oil and gas sources. So going out there with a renewable energy campaign, making it look like you are doing 100%, 100% of your investment is going into renewable is just horrific. And it's giving completely false hope to everyone. So I think from that perspective, I think it's just appalling, because it gives a completely inaccurate picture about what you're actually achieving. And I think the fact that, if they went in and said, we have upped our ante and we're now investing 20% into renewable energy, and that anything made off that marketing campaigns, any money made of that marketing campaign is then put into the investment of renewable energy and they can be made accountable for that, then that is a different picture. But unfortunately, the other problem is with these campaigns is money is just brought back in and you don't even know where it goes. You can't guarantee that the money made from your renewable energy one is put back into the renewable energy sector of those oil giants. I think the other thing as well that's just, the bit that terrifies me more than that is kind of what happened in the tobacco industry is the lobbying. And you see it even on LinkedIn, like the pro oil giant lobbyists out just spreading fake news and hate messaging, and some of their tactics are so dirty. And that almost gets me more than the big campaigns, because that's the really dirty approach. It's the kind of, that's the real greenwashing, saying you're going after renewable energy and then actually 9/10 of your budget is lobbying the government against legislation to go renewable, because that's not where your biggest profits are. I think that's the much bigger problem in all of this, really.
You mentioned the tobacco industry. I interviewed a couple of weeks ago Gustav Martinez, who works for Greenpeace Nordics, and we were talking about the campaign to stop oil companies from advertising that they did, and we were talking a bit about the tobacco industry, that when you think about how the tobacco industry used to advertise in the television and it's so glamorous, and just by stopping that, how much that has reduced smoking. And you can see the effects. It's not saying, of course we do still need to use fossil fuels every day from our food, and it is reducing, but it's still a big part of our lives. But by stopping that, we're not pushing people and driving people to use it more, and I think that makes such a difference.
I'm fully with you. I actually think now, and Emma Thompson put out that article yesterday, I think it is time now that actually we need legislation. Unfortunately, we can say everything we need, but those companies bring in so much money to advertising agencies that they just can't let go of that money. They've got entire sections dedicated to these oil giants, and I think, and because you've got some of the most creative minds working on their campaigns, they can be really sneaky with that, and they've got too much money to spend. And I think actually, sadly, I do think legislation is the only way forward, is to just stop the advertising altogether. No matter how sneaky or in front it is, just stop the entire lot of it.
Do you not think then that companies, if companies take a stand and if they change the way that they do business, and if they do move to renewables, and do you not think that we can do enough? Do you think it's going to take legislation?
I think it's a combination of things. I think with the infrastructure, I follow Dale Vince quite a lot, the CEO of
Yeah, I do.
And like one of the biggest, you know, I suppose like obstacles we have right now is that the planning needs to be released so that we can get inshore wind farms up and running and everything else at speeds. If we can get that, then yes, I think that is legislation. That's tied up in legislation. However, despite all that, if you can prove market demand and everyone moves over to renewable energy, the market demand will naturally drive that, because that's where the finance will start to be, you know, the financial industry will start to be like, okay, right, that's where we need to invest, because that's where the money's moving to. So I mean, it's like this, it's like the Cambridge course all over again. It's like there isn't one lever. There are so many different levers that need to be applied to that. And I think it's taking everything, you know, it's making sure as many businesses transition over as possible to renewable energy sources. It's really signing petitions for anything that drives that legislation so that, you know, we can rely less on the world markets and actually get better resilience, because we have our own renewable energy production here in the UK. We don't have to rely on anyone else, which is prime right now for the problems we're having with, you know, the energy market. So I think there's a number of things in that. I think there's a number of things, and you know, if you really wanted to go all out, you know, you could take the likes of Patagonia and become an activist brand. You know, actually use your sort of use your power to be able to drive change and educate customers about legislations that are out there or petitions that are out there. I think it's quite an interesting space.
I love those activist brands. I also follow Richard Hagan from Crystal Doors. I don't know if you've come across him.
Oh no.
He's absolutely brilliant, and he really sort of leads the way in the way that he's, you know, completely changed his business to be as sustainable as it possibly can. I'll send you his link after. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your recent posts, which I think were brilliant, about influencers and celebrity carbon emitters. You found some data sets and have been playing around a bit. Why don't you tell us a bit more about that and your views on them?
Yeah, so actually, I mean, this all started, I have a fascination with celebrities. Not from the point of view that I follow Heat magazine or anything like that. It's more because I used to work with Olympians a while back with sponsorship. I used to teach them about how you get sponsors. And so I've always kind of been, and when I used to work for the Times and Sunday Times, I used to always manage the celebrities who came to these big parties, because I never knew who any of them were. So I think everyone found it so refreshing, because I was never spellbound by them, because I didn't even know who they were. I literally had to make a kind of clipboard with all the faces on it to show me who I was meant to be looking after, which I think the celebrities found rather refreshing, because I was there going, are you Arlene? Are you okay? Right. So I'm looking after you tonight. So yes, that's where it came back. And then actually there's this amazing report called Movers and Shakers. Actually, it was the second one that was brought out by the DIMPACT initiative. And it basically, that was the first time brain print was ever brought onto the screen. And brain print is basically, and they were talking very much about brands at this point, and it was saying that everything you do and say as a company influences your audience, whoever touches you at that point. So this goes back to the greenwashing element. You know, if you are using disposable cups on your stand at an event, then you're normalizing that that's okay because your brand has said it's okay. And imagine that with loads of different brands coming together and doing the same messaging. And it's about taking responsibility for your own brand with every single angle. And as I was sort of mulling over this, I started thinking, I was like, do you know what? This applies to a lot of celebrities, sports stars, music stars, you know, everyone that has an Instagram account or a TikTok or LinkedIn, no matter how big or small, but I'm talking about the really big guys on this specifically, is they are effectively brands. I know they're people, but they are effectively brands if you think about them. And if they keep on, you know, driving around in, you know, SUV fossil fuel cars and taking photos of that and turning up at events in this, then they depict so much of, well, I say depict, this data set that I found that you're talking about, which I became absolutely obsessed with, and I was just telling you before we started recording this, how much I spent 3 hours this morning procrastinating on it, which is really embarrassing. I should have been actually working on other stuff, but it's amazing. And it's basically how through the periods of time, and it goes back for like hundreds of years, now which people influence culture and society and how we dealt with it. And even in the last 120 years, the shift is unbelievable. From actors at the beginning of, you know, the 20th century did have quite a lot, but I mean, politicians were sitting at like 20%, scientists were sitting at 10% in terms of how much impact they had on society. And now scientists are like 1.5% and politicians are like 4% or 4 or 5%. And yet 85% of our culture is impacted and influenced by music stars, sports stars, actors, you know, actors and actresses, and all these reality TV stars. I'm not going to say any more about them, but anyway, and if they are all telling us about a sort of like fossil fuel driven lifestyle, how are we ever going to get away from that? They're basically, so many people aspire to be like them, and if they're driving around in SUVs, if they're getting a new set of clothes every single day, that's they are normalizing an aspirational lifestyle, and that's what it looks like. And what I basically said in this post was all based around actually this wonderful guy who's a data geek who worked out how to code this massive data set of where planes were flying and who they were owned by on a daily basis, and directly connected it to a Twitter account. So it said every couple of minutes a Twitter post goes off saying Elon Musk has left from here in this size plane in his private jet, and this is where he's going, this is how much carbon he's emitted, and this is the distance he's gone. It's such a cool Twitter account. And I'm actually, back to Elon Musk, he actually apparently paid for this guy to stop you know, putting all his flights up on this Twitter account, and the guy said no. He said, I'm having far too much fun with this. Anyway, he put out something recently, and it said the top 10 celebrities from this year with private jets. How many times have they flown? And it's just, it's amazing, the data. Anyway, but Taylor Swift came out top, and I basically put a post up, basically visualizing these top 10 people with the most number of flights. I mean, like Taylor Swift in the first half of the year took 178 private jet flights. I mean, that's like one a day. I mean, where was she off to? Of course, she's now dealing with a massive backlash online to do with it and everything else. But the biggest thing I did was, pardon?
Why would you ever need to do that?
Well, I mean, literally, some of them were literally like 100 miles. I mean, it would have taken, you know, an hour and a bit to get to some of these, an hour and a half to get to some of these destinations in an EV car. And yet she private jetted just one person, you know, over to these. It's just horrific. But anyway, I then calculated, I added up all of their Instagram followers, and I was like, and it was interesting because when I posted it, I probably needed to make that slightly more obvious, but everyone latched onto the carbon element of these celebrities, which is amazing. But I said the big problem with this is that they've got 8% of the entire global population following them on Instagram. And there they are constantly taking photos of them getting on their private jet. I mean, Kylie Jenner the other day with that horrific post going, your jet or mine, babe, or something about her and Travis Scott. And they're basically showing that that is the aspirational life we should be living. So it's not, yes, they've got horrific carbon life, but they're actually, where they're having the worst impact is telling everyone that follows them that that is okay, that that is fine. So yeah, that's gone a bit mental, and I didn't quite expect the post to take off in the speed it has. It shows that if you ever post about celebrities, it's amazing the reaction you get.
I think it's because you don't realize the shock, you know, it shocks you at how bad it is and how much of an influence that they have. And you think about the work that we're trying to do, and it just sets it back. Like, you know, that's just outrageous. I find it, you know, Prince Harry, who him and Meghan, and they're jetting off all around the world, and yet they're the ambassadors of a green travel company. Like, it's just bullshit. It really is. And and that's when I find that it's really greenwashing. Because of the stuff that I talk about and where I go, obviously adverts that appear in social media when I'm, you know, leisurely on my social media. I have a travel company at the moment is saying we can remove your carbon emissions by traveling with us, which is all about and it's exactly what it says. And I'm like, you can't, you're not removing it, you're offsetting. And I keep getting their adverts and I'm like, I don't want to receive this. I don't want to see it. I want to report it. It's terrible. It's a terrible way to, you know, the wording that you're using is so wrong. But can I ask you what your views are on that, on offsetting and carbon neutrality, and companies that are saying, come and emit with us and we'll offset?
Yeah, I mean, carbon offsetting is such a difficult space. It's really interesting. I have an insurance client, and the saddest thing is that the carbon markets, the voluntary carbon offsetting markets, are still like the Wild West. So there's still no set regulation to say how much carbon is drawn down. There are, don't get me wrong, there are programs out there, and the gold standard one, if you're going to go down any offsetting route, the gold standard route is amazing. And, you know, that is calculated, it's regulated and everything else. But I think, not regulated, that's the wrong word, but what I mean is, like, it's considered one of the best programs out there if you're going to go down any route. I think there is a role for offsetting. Ultimately, we cannot get to zero emissions with any company. Like, we just can't. No company is ever going to reach zero emissions through reductions. So this is my sustainable transition hat sitting here, is that you've got to get down. The absolute aim is reduction over everything else. So the aim is to reduce your emissions as much as you physically can, and then you offset the final amount, the bit that you actually can't remove for whatever reason. And you know, and to get a net zero target, which is the ultimate one that you want to go to, and that's you know, that is the one that's fast becoming legislation, is that companies have a net zero target, has something like you have to reduce your emissions by 90 or 90. Again, don't quote me because I don't know I work with a carbon specialist on this because I don't know all the ins and outs, but it's something like 90 or 92%. You have got to reduce it right down to 92%. And if you can't do any more, then you can do offset. So I think offsetting absolutely has a role. I think the sad thing is, and I think you will offset more as you're trying to head for net zero. That's the thing, you know, you start with 20% reduction, so you're going to have to offset the other 80. And then you might get to, you know, 30% reduction the next year and you offset 70 or whatever it is, however fast your roadmap is. So I think offsetting is crucial because it at least brings companies into carbon neutrality while they're trying to hit net zero. I think where it is really, really toxic in my eyes is when companies are using it as a get out of jail free card. So they're like, I'm still going to, you know, take all my, so it's awful in the super yacht industry. So agents who are trying to sell boats still say, instead of getting a local guy to show someone around, they still say, no, I'm going to fly out to every single destination and show this client all the separate boats, rather than getting just a local agent to show them around instead. Whether that person should be even to the owner, the potential owner should even be traveling between, or even own a super yacht. Don't even get me started on the super yacht industry as an entirety. I just think there's no point for it whatsoever anyway. But it's a good example of, like, so what's happening is all the agents are like, it's okay, I've just offset, without actually tackling the actual problem is that they are traveling too much. That is the ultimate problem. And I also see it with exactly as a travel company, where it's like, keep traveling, but this is a better way of doing it. But you're still not sorting the situation. It's just trying to use it to get out of jail free card. So whilst I absolutely think there's a role for it, and there's going to have to be a role for it, it's just not always used in the right way. And I think sometimes, again, it is not always intentional. I think it's a lack of education in understanding net zero targets and and what role offsetting should play in all of this.
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, you know, I've very publicly said my views on offsetting, but it, you know, I believe that there's a place for it, and I believe in biodiversity and nature-based solutions, and but I believe in planting trees, and I think that it you know, it's great the amount of trees that are being planted and forests are being protected, and so much more. But it's just the way that people are saying, don't worry, it's okay. We're offsetting, so come and plant some trees and carry on doing what you're doing, rather than let's reduce. And that's
absolutely. I mean, that just makes me so, that absolutely makes me so angry. And I think, but the really exciting thing that I've heard recently is the big movement in carbon insetting, which is where companies look within their supply chain and come out with nature-based solutions that draw down carbon and actually improve their supply chain productivity as they do it. And that is really exciting. So that's really like actually making your entire supply chain better. It is just such a wonderful thing, because ultimately 80% of your emissions sit in your supply chain anyway, and your customer database. So why not go there to start trying to reduce?
Yeah, and it's about that collaboration again, isn't it? You know, in your supply chain, instead of just turning them away, actually work with them and support them to do better as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just sort of coming towards the end now, and I always like to ask this question. So if you was gonna ask people to make one big change in their lives to become more sustainable or business, what would that be?
Bank and move any investments and pensions to a more sustainable place. 100%. It's the biggest impact you can have, more than anything else. Like, I used to work, one of my clients is Climate Invest, who is a sustainable investing app, and they found this wonderful stat from Nordic Bank that basically said where you invest and bank has 28 times more impact than everything else you do combined to reduce your carbon footprint. So that would be my biggest thing, is move your money, especially as at the moment, I bet the top 5 banks, and I bet, you know, there's so many people who are banking with HSBC and all those big banks, and they are invested in those fossil fuel giants and helped with those profits. So you know, you have a direct.
Did you see my post that I just put out about 2 hours ago?
No, was it about that?
Yeah, so it's about, do you know where your pension is being invested? And the 3 answers I put were yes, for me it's all about making money, yes, for me it's about greening my pension, and then no, I haven't got a clue. And 50-50 was I haven't got a clue and greening their pension. But yeah, 50% have got no idea where their pension's being invested. That's crazy.
It is absolutely crazy. And I just, you know, I actually, like, when I was setting up my company, and I was like, I need an accountant to come in and help me because I have no idea what I'm doing. And then I got a finance manager in to help me set up the pension side within the, you know, anyway, I still have no idea what's going on. But anyway, he came in and I literally, the list I gave him of everything I didn't want my pension invested in, he was literally just like, okay, I know where you need to go now. I mean, poor guy. But yeah, it's amazing. You can start to find stuff out now, which is what's so good.
It is. And actually I think that's the beauty of these conversations is, you know, it triggers someone saying, oh, hang on, I'm going to go and have a look, and I'm going to find out. I didn't even think about it. So thank you so much. What's next for you? You know, you've got the rest of the year. What are your plans as a business? You're involved in so much. I'm sure you're really busy.
Really sweet. No, the big thing is that Paul Randall and I, so he's another sustainable marketing consultant, just launched the Sustainable Marketing Compass, which is our planning framework for marketers that help them easily instill sustainability into their marketing and align with their company's wider sustainability objectives. So the real focus is we've open sourced the model, and it's really about elevating the impact from that. And our biggest thing is impact at scale. We're just like, the more companies we can get using that, then the quicker we'll see change within the marketing function around sustainability, which is our absolute aim. So that's a real focus at the moment. And then the other one is I am working on some really exciting sustainable transition projects. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about those at some point, but I just can't right now.
Brilliant.
All under NDA, but it is exciting.
Well, everything that you're doing, I follow you closely and I will continue to follow you. Thanks for sharing everything that you do. And thanks for doing the interview today. It's been so insightful and I really, really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Sam. Well, it's been such a pleasure. It's been lovely having a chat. I love a good chat on a Thursday afternoon.
You take care. Have a good day.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.